Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Today is your favorite day of the year.
Oh my God, today is Kentucky Derby Day. I completely forgot. That's too bad. I would have loved to watch that today.
I mean, the whole thing lasts, 90 seconds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 minutes. It's a 4-hour pre-show and a 2-minute race. Oh, only in America.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, Jimi Hendrix,
Wayne Gretzky,
and Vin Scully.
But first, Andre Dawson.
Okay, Skippy, we're into week 7 of this being my favorite hour of the week because this is really the only thing I look forward to. There's not much else that goes on. Every day is pretty much the same. Someone actually told me the other day, because I didn't know what day of the week it was, and they said there is no days of the week. There's only yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that's it.
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's a good one. I posted on my Facebook, but of course you don't see that. You know the song by Morrissey, "Every Day is Like Sunday." That's like, it's never been more true.
Every day is like Sunday. Every day is silent and gray.
So, this week, I did send you a lot of text messages, and actually, I wanted to send you more, but I figured you might block me if I continued to send stuff, so I stopped.
I'm not going to block you, but you do send me a lot of stuff, and I'm like, sometimes you're bombarding me. And actually, some of the stuff that you send me, I've already known about for days.
So, a lot of it is when I take pictures of my television. This week, I took some video of my television.
Next level. You're next level.
I am next level. But the thing is...
But I sent you a video of my TV last week.
Yes, that's right. The thing is, this week... You know, I watch TV, I listen to radio, I listen to podcasts, I read stories online. I don't know what it was, but this week there were more Montreal Expos references this week than when the Expos actually existed.
Major League Baseball.
It's all the Expo stuff that they're showing on TSN. There's so much nostalgia.
It's not even that. None of this was from TSN, actually.
Really? No. But because the games are on TSN. You know, people are talking about it. Is that not right? Or
no. Listen to this. So I've written them down.
Okay.
So one of them was one of the listeners to the Tony Kornheiser show is from Montreal, and his grandfather used to own a hat factory in Montreal where they manufactured Expos hats. Mm-hmm. Like, what are the chances I'm listening to the Tony Kornheiser show and some listener's grandfather used to make Expos hats? Well, what are the chances of that?
Pretty low.
Anyway, then 2 different people, well, not people, but I heard this story from 2 different sources, that Andre Dawson is now a mortician.
Right. We got a listener mail with that subject, right? From one of our super listeners, Dave in Toronto, right? Didn't he message you saying that, did you know that Andre Dawson is now a mortician? He runs a funeral home.
And no, I didn't know. But then a few days later, I hear the same story. I get this daily sports newsletter, and it was mentioned in that newsletter also. And CBC did a whole story on it. Like, I can send you the link.
Why is it news?
Well, I don't know why it's news. I guess because, you know, nowadays people can't have normal funerals. I don't know.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
And then the third one. Okay, so this is the best one. So I'm watching PTI, and what are the chances that I'm watching PTI and they mention the Montreal Expos and the Montreal Gazette on PTI? And of course, it's because of this story that Pete Rose corked his bat when he was on the Expos. I don't care about Pete Rose. I never liked Pete Rose. I never thought he should be an Expo. But this is what I like about this story. Mm-hmm. So I went to the Montreal Gazette website and read the story. They didn't mention this on PTI, but the person who broke the story this week, his name is Joe Jahzzar. He was a groundskeeper with the Expos for 11 seasons.
Okay.
Now this guy Jahzzar is a club-playing musician in London, England.
Oh.
So I don't know how you go from groundskeeper in Canada to club-playing musician in England, but whatever.
Yeah.
So here, let me tell you a little bit about Joe Jahzzar. So he's credited with recording the Expos tribute song titled Let's Go Expos.
Oh, I love that song.
But isn't it just 3 words?
Yeah. I think you're right.
So, okay. Then also, this is not as important, but he served as the Jam Master band leader at the Owners Gala as part of the MLB All-Star Game festivities in Cleveland in 1997.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in Montreal in 1982.
And this is the best part. In his younger days, Jammer was a roadie for Jimi Hendrix, The Who, and Led Zeppelin.
Amazing. What a life. He went from being a roadie for Led Zeppelin to raking fake sand in the Big O. And then, well, I guess it's real sand, but on fake grass. And then, now he's a musician in London. Pretty wild.
This guy has an amazing life.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
It's funny because going into this episode, I was thinking... This is probably going to be the first episode in weeks where we actually don't talk about the Expos. And now, somehow, it's the first thing you bring up.
No, we have more Expos talk still. This could just be an Expos episode again, like last week.
Again. Oh, no.
So, anyway, speaking of Expos, those were all the references. That doesn't even include the 2 Expos games that were on television this week that I watched.
Well, I mean, one of them I would consider a Cardinals game, but...
That's true. So actually, just one thing about that Cardinals game, I don't know if you noticed, if you even watched it.
I didn't watch it, no.
So I was a little annoyed because McGuire hits 2 home runs in that game. It's the last game of the season. And after the second home run, it's in St. Louis, the crowd's going nuts. His teammates are going nuts. The announcers are going nuts. And then Expos catcher Michael Barrett, he gives Mark McGuire a fist bump just as he's touching home plate.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I get it. It's a milestone, whatever. But how do you think Carl Pavano, who was on the mound, who just gave up the home run, how do you think he felt about that?
Yeah, but, it's still a historic thing. And you know how baseball is.
I don't know if that would happen these days.
Guys get a base hit. They go to first base. The first baseman chats them up there. They're all friendly. I don't know. It's not a big deal.
Anyway, getting back to the not getting back to, but going to the other game.
What was the other game?
The Tim Raines game.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
So I know we talked about it. I'm not going to talk much about it, but so it was Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola, and they were great together. Those guys, by the way.
Well, yeah, they did the game of the week. That was the game of the week Saturday afternoon.
I know, but they were great. In general, not just that game. They were great together.
I mean, we don't have to. Vin Scully, we all know how great he is. I mean. And Joe Garagiola was fabulous on TV.
Actually, Garagiola, he reminds me a bit of George Costanza. No joke. He actually does.
That's funny.
Anyway, you got any baseball stuff?
Well, these games are better than what they're showing on MLB. MLB Network is showing classic games. It says classic games on the guide.
Yeah.
And they're not classic games.
Well,
they're
what are they?
June 5th, 2016. Carlos Carrasco strikes out 18, and then it's whatever 2014 Mike Trout's first game, and then another one is Clayton Kershaw's first game. These are not classic games, they're just games. I don't know, I have no interest in watching them whatsoever. Nothing, zero. But no, I don't have any other baseball notes other than I did see, we can talk about this another day, I did see a very, very good special on MLB Network about unbreakable records. And I was going to pick your brain about it, but I think you have too much stuff on your list, so maybe we'll save it for another time. Okay.
You did see that there's actual live baseball happening in Korea.
Yeah, the KBO.
Yeah.
I heard you're getting a subscription to get those games, KBO Network.
I actually did go to their website.
Oh my god, yeah.
But you can't watch it. You can't watch it here. I mean, at the moment, you can't watch it.
But you would be watching it weird hours anyways. You'd be watching it 6:00 in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The games are on ESPN. We don't get ESPN, but the games are on ESPN.
Yeah. I don't know. It's good that they're playing. They're playing in empty stadiums, which is weird. I think it's going to be weird.
But you know what I saw? Because they showed the highlights. What I noticed was they're saying, how everyone has to have their temperature taken and they're taking all these precautions and there's no fans allowed in the stadium. However, the camera crew is allowed in there and the cheerleaders are allowed in there. And so there's a ton of people in there actually. And
well, I mean, NBA said that they would need to test 15,000 people if they were going to put everybody in a bubble. And you know that there's not 15,000 players, right? So
The other thing was the players, they're all like high-fiving each other. Like,
Yeah,
they're
I
not
saw.
staying 6 feet apart at all.
well, but I mean, supposedly these guys are all tested negative, right?
Supposedly, but I mean, that doesn't mean you can't eventually get sick.
Well, I mean, in theory, if everybody in the bubble is negative and you don't go outside the bubble, then you can't get sick.
Right, but they have to leave the stadium to go to wherever they sleep at night.
But I'm saying that's part of the bubble. I don't know if it is or not, but yeah.
Anyway,
It's like what they're proposing. Maybe we could segue. I don't know if you wanted to talk about like what the NBA is proposing about everybody at Disney World. There's a lot of proposals out there now for NBA and NHL to start their seasons. And
I just don't. I don't see how it could work because I get what they want to do, and in theory, the plan might make sense. But you know, there's going to be at least one person that gets sick, and then once one person gets sick, it's all over.
That's what I haven't heard in any of the articles and interviews that I've read and listened to. Like, they haven't addressed that question. Like, what happens when someone's sick? Does the whole thing stop? Does it just continue? Like, what happens? You know? And the thing that they're not addressing is like, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the last episode or if I mentioned this on one of our house party sessions with our buddies, but like, what if like players don't want to go?
Oh, there's already a few that have said they don't want to go.
And I'm not saying they don't want to go because they're scared of getting sick. They don't want to go because they don't want to be away from their family for 2 months or 6 weeks without seeing them, right?
I've heard both things. I've heard players
no,
say
both things. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
you know, they don't want to go because they don't want to get sick, and they don't want to go because they don't want to be away from their families. Which
So,
I don't
I mean, it's all well and good.
I don't know if I agree with the second thing, because even during a regular season, you're traveling half the time and you're away from your family half the time anyway. So what's the difference?
What's the longest road trip that you could be on?
2
10
weeks?
days? Yeah, so maybe that's the most they go without seeing their family, and then sometimes their family even comes with them.
Yeah, but I mean, what about the players that aren't from the United States, where their families are like overseas or something?
Yes,
They don't see their families the whole season.
There are many players in that situation. There are some that's a fact. But I mean, there's still many that live in the United States. NHL players that live in Canada, I mean, the thing that the NHL has really working against it is that the more than half, I don't know, what's the percentage of Canadian-born players in
I
the
think it's
NHL?
like 50 to 55%.
Anyway, so the majority of players are Canadian, but the majority of the franchises are in the United States. So you have two countries that you got to figure something out here, and I don't see the border opening anytime soon at all. And actually, I hope it doesn't open.
Yeah.
So, personally, but. So I don't see how the NHL is going to do that. The NBA is in a different situation. There's only one Canadian franchise, and I don't even know if any of those players right now are actually in Toronto, because probably their homes are elsewhere.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because yesterday on the news, they opened up the Raptors training facility.
Yeah.
And
who was there?
Apparently, well, first of all, only one player is allowed in at a time.
Okay. Okay.
Like all the other NBA teams, the NBA said a maximum of 4 players at once, but the Raptors are more strict. Only one player at a time. One player, one coach, and they have to be 12 feet apart.
Well, there's no point in that, because half of these guys have courts in their homes and they can just do shoot-arounds.
Well, that's the reason they're opening up the facilities, because some of them don't have courts in their homes.
I know.
But apparently half of the Raptors are already in Toronto. Like, they live in Toronto all the time.
Right.
So
but I just don't see how the Raptors could play games in Toronto. Well, I mean, again, like, we're talking about stuff that's like complicated and needs to be figured out. There's like this is what I was talking about when you quizzed me the other week about finishing the season. Like, it's all well and good that these leagues want to come up with plans. Like, that's their job. They have to try to figure out how to play the games. Like, the NHL executives and NBA, like, they can't just be sitting around having a vacation. Their job is to figure out how to try to come up with creative ways to get the league going. But think about like when we talk about like, oh my God, how could the NHL stop the season and send the players to the Olympics? Think about all the hurdles that they have to overcome, the insurance and the travel and stopping the season and the back-to-backs in the season, because like there's these hurdles, right? So think about that situation. This situation has 6,000 times more hurdles to overcome. Like, it's like there's hurdles on top of hurdles on top of hurdles, like that you have to try to figure out how to overcome these. And I just don't know how they can do that. Especially there's all these weird levels of government. You've got federal levels of government with different laws. In the United States, every state is doing their own thing. So soon NBA teams are going to be able to do practices, but like in Georgia, they're going to be able to do that, but in New York, they're not going to be able to do that, right? And in Toronto, who knows what they're going to be able to do? You said they're more strict. So it's like, there's 6 million unknowns, you know?
What they should actually do, because this is probably going to go on for like a year, right? Let's say.
Yeah.
It's not unrealistic that this goes on for a year.
Yeah.
So how ironic would it be that they discover the vaccine on March 12th of 2021, which would be exactly a year from the Rudy Gobert day.
Yeah.
And then they just pick up this season, next season, on the same date.
Right. They just push pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes them 2 years to play one season.
The thing that's going to start happening in all the sports, maybe less in the NHL and the NBA because their seasons are sort of on pause right now, but like leagues like the MLB, like what happens with the contracts? Like, so the biggest example is Mookie Betts. So he was traded with 1 year left on his deal, right? Like does he become a free agent, or is he still under contract? Does that year count? Like there's so much things to figure out. Does the year count even if they don't play?
So actually, I read a little bit about this because there's two things. There's like, does the year count, and is his contract expired now?
Right.
Also, does he get paid even though he didn't work at all?
Well, I mean, there's a whole other story about getting paid.
And also, the third thing actually is, does he, well, not just him, but any player, do they get credit for the service time?
Well, that's much more important for like younger players or players who are about to hit that free agent threshold. You know, like that's a big deal. You know?
So I heard that they're trying to come to a compromise. So either they'll get paid, but you don't get credit for the service time, or you get credit for the service time, but you don't get paid. It's one or the other, I think.
No, they're in a situation, baseball is, and football is going to have to address this eventually, where no one's going to be happy. You're gonna say this is how it's going to work, and it's going to work much more for certain situations. Some people are going to benefit from the rules that you make, and some people are going to really get penalized by the rules that are made. And then there's just no way around that.
I think what they're leaning towards in baseball, and of course the Players Association has to agree to it, which good luck getting them to agree to anything. But I think what they're leaning towards is, if there's no season at all and they don't play any games at all, they're not going to pay the players anything because they didn't work, but they will get credit for service time equivalent to the exact amount of service time they had last year. So if you played 150 games last year, it's as if you played 150 games this year. But if you were like in the minors last year and you didn't play any games at all, even if you were scheduled to be called up this season, you get nothing.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I understand.
Anyways,
enough of that.
The National Hockey League.
By the way, one other you mentioned about the NHL. This is the dumbest thing I've heard. I know that you, like you said, the NHL and the NBA and all these leagues, they have to come up with these different ideas, and who knows if they're going to use any of them. But I heard this week, and actually last week also, that the NHL wants to do their draft in June before the season even resumes. And this is the dumbest thing I've heard of all time. I think of all time, because first of all, how do you do the draft when you don't know the order of the standings, the final standings? Right? Who's going to pick first? Who's going to pick last?
Yeah.
Not only that, so they want to do this draft in June, and then they think they might resume the season after the draft. So, but like, you know what happens at the draft? Teams make trades, right? Like, they're planning for next season. So you're going to trade, like, I don't know, one of your best players just to get a bunch of draft picks. But then you've traded your best players, and now you have to resume the season without your best players?
But also it works the other way too. Like, what if you draft someone really good? Can they play on your team right away?
Well, he shouldn't be allowed to.
Right? Like, imagine it was a year with Sidney Crosby. Like, that guy would come on your team right away. You'd be a cup contender.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the rush is. The only stipulation for the draft is that it has to happen before next season starts. If next season doesn't start till 2021, you can do the draft anytime. I don't know why they're in such a rush to do it.
And the NHL's also like, I don't understand that they're proposing like that the season should start and then like more teams should make the playoffs. It shouldn't be more teams. It should be less teams.
Well, because they don't want to finish the regular season, and they feel it's unfair to like the 9th and 10th place team who maybe had a chance at making the playoffs. They're going to let him in.
But like under the current thing, the Canadians were going to make the playoffs. Canadians gave up already. They were sellers. There was teams that were already sellers at the trade deadline. They gave up. They didn't want to make they want to make the playoffs, but they knew they're not going to. Now you're going to include them? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Oh man, the NHL is they're always chasing, I find, like the NHL, like there's very very little like leadership there. And you know why.
Let's talk about the 1987 Canada Cup.
Oh, so yeah, like first of all, TSN is showing what they're calling the 87 Canada Cup relived, which is great. I saw the commercial for it, and then of all the things that have been on, all the classic games, I was like, man, this is gonna be great. I can't wait to watch this, and like so. Look, I recorded game 1 yesterday, and I recorded all. I'm going to record all. I've already set my PVR to record all the games, but there's 3 games only. So you watched game 1 yesterday? And
I did, and actually, I forgot who won game 1.
Well, I knew that Soviet Union won game 1 because I remember that Canada won 2 and 3, so I knew that they had to have lost game 1.
I didn't remember who won game 1 or 2. So,
well, we talked about this right before we pushed record, in that because that Gretzky-Lemieux play and at the end of game 3 has been replayed and replayed and replayed 6 billion times. It's pretty much the only thing you remember about that tournament, right? Like you forget like that, like Canada almost lost. Like they could have lost game 2, they could have lost game 3. Like that series could have went either way every time, and if you actually played it 100 times, Canada could have lost 50 times, right?
Well, like, every honestly, game was a 1-goal game, right? So
yeah.
And actually, I didn't like the way Canada didn't deserve to win game 1. I watched it yesterday, much more closely than I did back in 1987.
Yeah.
And Canada was a bit dirty. Like, I didn't like it at all.
Well, it just goes to show, like, and I just looked up the rosters. So, when you look at the USSR roster, and keep in mind, at the time, none of these players were in the NHL. There was no Russian players in the league. It was a team of skill, right?
Yeah.
The main line, right? Like they had the Krutov, Larionov, right? Like the KLM line, Makarov, and then you had like Alexander Semak. That guy was a game breaker. What's his name that scored? You're gonna see in game 2, he scored a goal to send it into overtime. Valery Kamensky, that guy was mental, right? So like it was a team of skill. And then on Canada, you had Gretzky and Lemieux, but like you had, he didn't play in game 1 like Kevin Dineen, right? And Claude Lemieux, but they were on the roster, right?
And also, Craig Hartsburg had a dirty cross-check yesterday. I say yesterday, right. Game 1.
Yeah, then you had grinders. You had Brent Sutter and Rick Tocchet and Doug Gilmour, who wasn't an offensive player really at the time. So, like, they were a gritty group,
Gilmour actually played well in game 1, and he wasn't dirty, but Craig Hartsburg was. I didn't like that. And Messier was a little bit dirty in game 1 as well.
Messi was hugely dirty in that entire series. And that's like my one lasting memory, and I haven't watched any game yet. Like Messier, keep in mind, this is 87 Messier, right? This is not captain of the Rangers Messier. This is not a 100-point season Messier. This is Messier, who was the second center on the Oilers, who was like racking up penalty minutes galore every season. Like that's the Messier that we have here,
So I didn't like the way Canada played in game 1. I don't know. I don't remember anything about game 2 or 3. I'll find out tonight and tomorrow.
Right.
One thing I did notice, and again, I always notice things that no one cares about. a few times if you see Gretzky without his hockey gloves on, and I have a photo of it, of course, because I took a photo of my television.
Jesus.
Gretzky is wearing a wristband, which isn't a big deal. But the wristband is a Montreal Canadiens wristband.
Really?
Yes.
Is it because, like, the game was in Montreal and that's the trainer gave them out? Like, he's like, I need a wristband that's for sweat. Can you give me something? And
that might be the reason. I don't know. And I do recall seeing this many, many years ago. And then I completely forgot about it until I saw it again yesterday.
Right.
And it's clearly a Montreal Canadiens wristband. It's not like, I'll send you a photo, you'll see later.
But game 1 was in Montreal.
It was, yes. And the other funny thing about this tournament, game 2 and 3 were in Hamilton, which doesn't even have an NHL team.
I know. I never understood the
because they had this brand new
of the Cops Coliseum.
Well, it was a brand new arena. That's why Cops Coliseum. But I mean, I don't think that would happen in this day and age. You wouldn't see that. Like you'd see it these days. You'd see it in Montreal or Toronto.
Well, we know it hasn't happened because when the World Juniors came, it was Montreal. Toronto shared it, and like we haven't seen games in Hamilton of that stage.
The World Juniors, though, they do sometimes play like in Red Deer, Alberta, or whatever.
Of course, yeah. But how about that Team Canada power play?
Insane.
Right?
Although at one point they had a 2-man advantage and they didn't score. Like I'm talking about what I watched yesterday.
Right. Pretty wild, no?
No, the power play is whatever. It's
that
those 5 guys on the ice at the same time and you don't score a goal. I don't understand how.
Right. So I can't wait to watch. I'm going to probably watch the game 1 this afternoon and then I'll check out the other one. Although it's funny because I set my PVR for game 1 and I found it right away on TSN 4, right?
Okay.
For whatever reason. And then I'm looking for it on tonight and it wasn't on. And then I had to like look through all the 5 TSNs and it's on a specific one, right?
Yeah, it's not always the same TSN. Because
tonight there's actually a live sporting event happening that a lot of people are going to watch.
That UFC thing.
The UFC. It's the only thing going. Right?
You heard
so
one of the fighters
UFC
tested positive. You heard that, right?
I heard. Yes, I did hear. Yes.
But anyway, let me talk about hockey for a sec. So all these amazing Canadian teams like the Team Canada team from 87 or from 84 or from all those years and all the what about all the Olympic teams like the one in Salt Lake, the one in Vancouver?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know which one is the best one and I don't want to get into a whole debate over it because we'll be here till tomorrow.
Right.
But this is what bothers me. Tony Kornheiser, about a week ago, he said that the NBA Dream Team with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, he referred to that team as the best team ever assembled in any sport. Now,
he may be right.
He may be right, but I think one of these Canadian teams that went to the Olympics or one of these Canadian teams that played in the Canada Cup, I'm sure at least one of them could give that dream team a run for the money.
Well, the difference is that for example, this Team Canada, this Canada Cup, and now it's even more pronounced as time has gone by. There's 5 good teams or 6 good teams, right? And in all these like Canada had competition, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
like. Russia was good. Sweden was good. Czechoslovakia was good.
Exactly.
USA was good, right? Like, well, the USA in 87 wasn't that good, but like they actually had people to play against. In 87, not as much because it was really Canada, Soviet Union, and then the rest weren't as strong. But like, who was the United States beating? Lithuania.
Oh, back then the American team wasn't good. Oh, you're talking about the basketball team.
Yeah, I'm talking about the NBA. They won every game by 30, 40 points without even breaking a sweat because the competition was so lousy.
Right, so that doesn't make them better.
The proof is that a few years later, not the next Olympics, but 2 after that, they didn't send all the stars because now the best stars didn't want to go, but they still sent basically an all-star team and they didn't win. Because you know why? The competition got better. All of a sudden, international, because of the Dream Team, basketball grew internationally and other countries started to have really good players. And look at what's happening in the NBA now, where the best players are actually from other countries, many of them,
So this is what I'm saying. This is why one of these Canadian hockey teams that played in the Canada Cups or in the Olympics could give this basketball dream team a run for their money. I mean, it's impossible to compare because it's two different sports.
No, you can't compare.
But
you know what? This team, what's amazing about this team is that the '87 Canada team is like, you do have like Gretzky and Lemieux together for the only time, which kind of like, it's like a once in a lifetime thing, right? I mean, but when you're looking at the rest of the team, I was looking at the roster. I was like, Doug Crossman, Craig Hartsburg, Normand Rochefort. Like, these guys were good players. They're certainly not Hall of Famers.
But
right?
you didn't
I mean,
mention
the goalie
you didn't mention Ray Bourque and Paul Coffey.
No. Of course, Paul Coffey and Ray Bourque are on the team, and Larry Murphy, who's also in the Hall of Fame, right? But like, there's some guys on here that I was like, are they, like, I didn't remember them being that good, to be honest. And they had Grant Fuhr in net. The goalie situation is probably the weakest goalie situation of any version of Team Canada ever.
Well, before you even mention their names, you have to recall that back then, in the regular NHL season, games were like 6-5 all the time.
No, I know.
It was a very high-scoring era, so there was none of this Patrick Waugh 2-1 game or Martin Brodeur 2-1 game. That didn't exist in the 80s.
No, I know. And then back then, if your goals against average was under 3, you were considered really good, even if it was like 2.8 or 2.9.
I don't even know if anyone had a goals against average under 3 back then.
Well, I mean, they did, but but I mean, now if your goals against average is 2.9, you're like 25th in the league.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, the goalies were Grant Fuhr and Ron Hextall, and believe it or not, Kelly Rudy was the third goalie. But, I mean, it's not like... And don't get me wrong, Grant Fuhr is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So, I mean, hard to take anything away from him. Yeah, I guess he's the kind of goalie that's very polarizing because his stats are never going to live up to maybe how good he was. Or maybe it's the other way around and maybe he was just completely overrated. Like, I don't know.
Every time I hear something about Grant Fuhr, they always say he gave up one less goal than the team he was playing on.
But that's not always a reflection of his skill, but rather the players he had playing in front of him.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he played on the Oilers when they would score 6-7 goals a game, right? So
right. So yeah, I get that.
That's the pitcher that gets a lot of run support compared to the pitcher that gets no run support.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly when you look at the other Team Canadas of more recent history with Martin Brodeur and
Patrick
Gary
Waugh.
Price and Patrick Waugh didn't really play for Team Canada.
He did 1 year, I thought.
The year they lost to Hasek.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean...
And Roberto Luongo, too.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the best group, but like I said, it's still the Gretzky and Lemieux team, you know. So it's pretty wild. I mean, I can't wait to watch them. I'm gonna watch all the games. I'm gonna watch the 3 games and just remember it hopefully remember it like it was yesterday, you know.
Football.
So I have a couple of football notes.
Football. What in the holy hell are you gonna talk about football?
Well, I don't know if you heard this. I saw this on the ticker this week.
Uh-huh.
This is one of those things I was going to send you a picture of my television, but I didn't.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you heard that the Alouettes signed this guy, Vinny Papali. Did you hear this?
No.
Do you know who he is?
I saw it on the ticker and I was wondering why this is on the ticker.
So, I mean, it's on the ticker because anytime any team signs
I know,
a player,
but
it's on the
what's
ticker.
the significance? Yeah.
So, Vinny Papali is the son of the guy who used to play on the Eagles that they did that movie Invincible about. Who actually,
okay,
his dad's
very nice.
name is Vincent Papali.
I didn't realize that. Okay. Have you ever seen that movie? It's pretty good.
I have seen the movie, but when I saw the name on the screen, I'm like, hold on, is this the same guy that was in the movie? And then I did some research. Turns out it's the son of the guy.
Meanwhile, the Alouettes signing people. I mean, the CFL's not even going to play.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other story. But it's just funny that the guy's son, I mean, and the guy must be really old now because that movie, he played on the Eagles a long time ago.
It was in the 90s or the early 2000s, no?
I thought he played on the Eagles like way before that. The movie was in the 90s.
The movie came out in the 2000s, no?
Right, it did, but when the actual player played on the Eagles...
Oh, I see, yeah.
That was a long time ago. So, I mean, how does he have a son that's that young?
Who knows?
And speaking of fathers and sons.
Mm-hmm.
This is the opposite. So in this case,
You're right. He played on the Eagles with in the Dick Vermeil era.
yeah,
in
it
the
was a
late
long time
70s.
ago.
Yeah,
So how old are his kids?
I don't know. Pretty wild.
Anyhow, so here's the opposite. So here you had the dad played in the NFL, the son is on a CFL team. Here's the opposite. Joe Burrow, who just got drafted, his dad played in the CFL.
Yeah, his dad played on the Alouettes too.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I looked it up recently when it was the week of the draft.
And the funny thing is, so the NFL draft was what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
They're already talking about next year's draft.
Yeah, well, the tanking for Tua is over, so now it's like who's tanking for what's his name from Clemson, Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the rumors are that the Patriots don't want to sign any quarterback because they want to be bad, so they can draft Trevor Lawrence.
I believe it.
I believe it too, actually, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Did you see?
And actually, wouldn't Belichick just admit it? He's the type of person that would just admit it. No,
oh, I don't think he would admit it.
no.
Did you
No,
see Frank
I don't know.
Caliendo yesterday? Do you know who he is?
I know who he is. Yeah, I didn't see him. Where was he?
So on ESPN, he does these impressions all the time, and he's pretty. He's pretty
yeah.
good. So they
He
had
does a good Belichick.
What's
Yeah.
that?
He does a good Belichick.
Well, I mean, anyone could do a good Belichick. You just sit there and say nothing.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So he did. They had him do all these impressions of all these like 5 or 6 or 7 different coaches.
Right.
Their reaction when they saw their schedule.
Right. Okay.
It's pretty funny, actually. You have to Google it. So anyway,
I'll check it out. He's very funny. That guy.
he does a really good John Gruden.
Yeah. Oh, his Gruden is fantastic.
It's like better than the actual John
It's
Gruden.
more Gruden than the actual Gruden.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh my god. So the NFL actually was in the news this week because Andy Dalton signed with the Cowboys, and like all of a sudden like it was like news story number 1. It even was ahead of The Last Dance in the news cycle, which is pretty hard to do these days. But I just thought it was funny. Like Cowboys fans just freaking out because they signed a quarterback. I mean, come on.
They were also in the news because they released a calendar.
Yeah, well, okay. So of all, look, we're on episode 182. So the most true thing you've ever said in 181 previous episodes, and actually 182 including this one, is that last year when the NFL released their schedule, you were like, I don't understand what the big deal is. They just put out a calendar, like, and it's so true actually because the teams and the fans can easily find this out. You know exactly who your opponents are going to be. You know all the opponents that are going to be on your schedule. You just don't know the order. And you don't know if you're home or away and stuff like this. But it's not like that much of a surprise.
Yeah.
You know? I guess for the season ticket holders, they want to see what games they're going to go to, right?
Well, they're not going to go to any games because you're not going to be allowed in the stadium this year.
So true. You're not going to be allowed to go. Oh, my God. All right. I mean, I have no notes left, but you can, if you have more, you can keep going.
TV?
Well, I just wanted to ask you a few things that you may have watched on television this past week.
Let's go for it. Is
So-
it sports or just regular TV stuff?
2 of them are sports. One of them isn't.
Okay, sure. Go for it.
So they obviously the Kentucky Derby didn't happen, but they did this virtual Kentucky Derby, and I actually saw the highlights, and honestly, it looked so real.
Yeah, well, like the level of computer animation these days is obscene. No,
Like when you see
so the technology is incredible now. What they can do.
when you see these car races, I can't tell if it's real or not. I really cannot
No.
tell.
And you don't even play video games. Like when you play the video games, like what my son plays when he plays like NBA or whatever, or even what I play when I play FIFA, it's like sometimes you don't know if it's a video game or if I send you like a little video of like my gameplay in FIFA, you maybe would think it's a real game.
Well, didn't you in like 1980 something? You were watching a game at your house with Mark, and you hit record, and by accident you recorded your video game.
Well, yeah, but that was in 1987, 86, 87. But like in those days, the video games look shitty.
Yes, but you recorded it.
Right? We recorded it now, and the crazy thing about that, the game was RBI Baseball. If anybody remembers that game, it was on the original like Nintendo system, or actually Sega, I think is what we were playing. So it was RBI Baseball, which was like a really lousy game, but it was fun to play at the time. Like at the time, we thought this was, this is the pinnacle of video game baseball. And the significance of the game is that Mark threw a no-hitter at me. So he actually pitched a no-hitter against me in RBI Baseball, and we inadvertently recorded the game.
He had his good stuff that day.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he must have really been pushing X in it. Well, actually, back then there was no X. It was just like, no, Sega Genesis had three buttons, A, B, C. So I guess the A button was hot,
The other thing that I watched this week, and you have to keep in mind that desperate times calls for desperate measures.
Yeah, sure.
I watched mini golf on RDS, but mini golf from like 20 years ago.
You sent me so this is the state of RDS.
It's not even new mini golf. It's old mini golf.
They're showing classic mini putt, right? The classic episodes of mini putt. Now, anybody who's outside of Quebec is not going to understand the significance of this at all. But they used to show mini putt a lot on RDS, and they had these announcers that would like scream and yell. Like
when you got a hole in one, it was like the hugest deal.
It was nuts, right? So yeah, you sent me a little video clip on the WhatsApp.
Because it was great. I mean, I wanted to watch until I heard the guy say birdie. And I finally got to see one, and then I stopped watching.
Yeah. I mean, come on. How could they be showing that? That's obscene. That's absurd.
Trou numéro 2 en carrière, Cal Carmoni a 4 birdies en 8 présences. Oh, attention! Birdie!
You know what I noticed? And I didn't notice this 20 years ago. I only noticed it this week. Each hole is quite small. Like they're not like 500-yard holes like in real golf.
No, it's mini golf.
Right.
They're playing like in a mini putt in Saint Jerome.
Exactly. And yet, somehow the cameraman manages to miss the most important part of the shot.
It's so true.
Like, it's the easiest thing to shoot, and he can't shoot it properly. I don't get it.
It was the most low-budget thing anyways at the time. I mean, like, I don't understand how anybody watched it at the time. And then the fact that they're actually showing it on, like, classic episodes now just goes to show how it's grown in like mythology over the years, right? Like in this province. It's very, very strange.
The other funny thing is like you see the guy like when he misses his shot, they show his face. It's like he just lost like the Masters.
Yeah, I know. I think the prize was like $500. That was the purse. That was the prize money.
And in the background, you'll see like a mom and a dad or whatever, like kids just playing on other holes.
Randos would watch, and people playing like on the playground behind, and
it was hilarious.
Actually, I don't even think it was $500. I think the winner got the other people just got like gift certificates at Casual Sport.
Lifetime free membership at any mini golf course in the province.
That would be. I would actually like that.
So the other thing I wanted to know if you watched.
Mm-hmm. Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist.
Yes.
I knew it. I knew you were going to ask me. It was really sad.
It was.
I didn't like the episode at all. I thought there was too much songs and overly sad. Like, I don't want to feel sad for an hour. Like it was one sad song after another sad song after another sad song after another sad song. And I know it was a sad episode and the father passed away. Spoilers. No one else is watching this anyway. So I don't know why I have to say spoilers, but like, so I did not like the episode up until the end. I thought the Bye Bye Miss American Pie month, whole thing at the end was really, really well done. Like,
so,
but that's it,
So anyway, I agree. I thought there were too many songs, and it really reminded me of a show that I never watched called Glee. And I know that there's a big difference.
Glee was never sad like that.
I know there's a difference between Glee and this, but actually I read something online where they compared Zoe to Glee. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the only one that found that comparison.
Yeah, well, I mean, any show with like musical stuff.
But there were too many songs, and it was too sad. And I did like that Bye Bye Miss American thing. I had to watch that whole part 3 times because what I wanted to figure out, and I don't know if you noticed this, that's all shot in one shot.
One camera. Yeah, one shot. The camera follows the characters around from one room to the next. And that's why I'm saying it was really, really well done. Like that last, I feel that, I don't know who's the director, the producer, the showrunner of this show, but in my mind, it's like, okay, the father's going to die and the show's going to end with American Pie montage, like the American Pie one camera shot throughout, and every character is going to be in it. And then they're like, okay, that's great. Now what do we do for the rest of the episode? It's like they knew that they were going to do this, but they didn't know what the rest of the episode was going to be.
So I did some Googling because I wanted to know if in fact it was legit. Like, cause sometimes they make it look like it's all one shot with one camera, but they can sort of trick you. And it turns out it was legit. Yeah. And apparently they did, I think, 7 different takes.
Wow.
And they ended up using number 6 because they felt that number 6 was the best one. And in fact, they knew number 6 was the best one. They just did one more after for the hell of it, in case.
That's like when we record our little intros at the end of this episode. Shh. And you make me do a retake just for the hell of it.
Don't tell the listeners that we do that. So
all right.
I'll send you a good article because it's funny. We both had the same thought that there were too many songs and it was too sad. And the writer of the show, he mentions in this article, he didn't want there to be too many songs and he didn't want it to be too sad. So actually, his original thought, it was even more sad than what we actually saw this week. So
is that the season finale? Is that it?
Well, that's the season finale. I don't know if it's coming back for season 2.
I mean, even if it is, it's not going to be coming back for a while. Like we mentioned last week, the networks are going to run out of shows, because nothing new is being made.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'll send you that story.
Okay, good.
So the only thing I have left here is I want to ask you, what's bugging you?
Things that bug me?
What's bugging me?
I know what's bugging you. Let's see if you get this right.
The Last Dance.
Yes.
It's bugging the hell out of me.
You can't get away from it. It's impossible.
First of all, I haven't watched it.
Neither have I.
Okay.
But you can't get away from it.
Interesting, though, actually, just to tell people who are listening, I don't know if everybody's aware. Maybe we did talk about this already. In Canada, it's on Netflix.
Yes, I think we did talk about this.
So I just find that interesting. I haven't watched it. I may end up watching it eventually one day, but the problem is that I watch TSN, who has a lot of ESPN content. I listened to a lot of podcasts that come from either ESPN or The Ringer or different sources. And I mean, every sports podcast that I listen to is talking about The Last Dance as if it's like, well, I mean, it's the only thing on. So they're reviewing it like almost shot by shot, scene by scene, talking about analyzing it. I mean, how do you analyze a documentary like as if it's a sporting event? I just don't get it. Just watch it and enjoy it, I'm just so sick of it. I am so sick of it. Like, like I told you, like I unsubscribed to Bill Simmons mostly because of that. Like that's one of the factors.
And then you went and listened to an episode anyway, you told me.
I did, and then I really unsubscribed.
So, but like, even if you listen to a podcast that has nothing to do with sports, a Canadian podcast called Front Burner.
There's an episode about The Last Dance. I was freaking out.
That's what I'm saying. You cannot avoid this.
So yeah, Front Burner. I look forward to Front Burner every day. And the episode comes out at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Maybe even earlier.
It's early because when I wake up, it's there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They do it on purpose to be like your morning news, right? It's
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like, what was the podcast you talked about, the New York Times, The Daily?
Yeah.
So it's the CBC version basically of The Daily. And then I look at it one morning and I'm like, oh my God, The Last Dance. Like even on this, The Last Dance. Like oh man, I wish it would go away. I mean, it's not going to go away because there's still 4 more episodes, but I guess only 2 more weeks, I guess. Mm-hmm. So.
And apparently the last 2 episodes, they haven't finished editing them yet.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So.
Very interesting. All I have to say is I'm not watching The Last Dance. Before we sign off, remember you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
Do you have anything to end the show with? I have an interesting little article.
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
So, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't remember when it was. You were asking me if I was going to actually cut my cable, and apparently now's the best time. You told me now's the perfect time to cut your cable and go digital only, streaming only, right? Remember?
Well, only because there's no live sports. That's the only reason I have cable.
Exactly.
And since there's no live sports, why am I paying for that?
Right. So, friend of the show, Gerald Glassford, who runs the Pop Culture Cosmos podcast, but also the Lakers Fast Break that I appeared on. He put a link this week on social media, and I'll just read you the first paragraph. Traditional cable and satellite TV providers posted their most massive quarterly subscriber losses in the first 3 months of 2020 as the COVID-19 tornado started to hit the U.S. economy in March. Anyway, so the cord cutting bleeding is only going to get worse in Q2, and like they're saying, like most people now have cut the cord with cable. Like, this is it. The cable companies are dying right now, and it's not surprising, right? Because the streaming stuff's taken over, and people are looking for also ways to save money, right? So I just thought maybe now, and that this article made me think about, like, maybe I should be doing this too. I don't know.
The only thing is, I agree, like, I should cut it as well. And you can get almost anything you want on the internet, on your computer or on your phone.
Yeah.
But it's still so much easier to just turn on the television than it is to, like, turn on your computer and find the right website. And, you know, it's still a pain to do all that.
Is it really easier? Or are me and you and our generation just used to that? Because I don't think my kids would tell you that it's easier. Because they're used to just, like, finding stuff online. You know, one day, like back in November, Matthew comes downstairs. I'm like, oh, the Sixers game's on TSN. He's like, yeah, I'm watching it upstairs in my room. I'm already watching it. I'm like, oh, you're watching it on, like, the TSN website? He goes, no, on YouTube.
Okay.
So, like for him, it's, like, perfectly normal to just, like, go and find the game. You know, someone's gonna stream it. You know, someone's gonna be streaming it, even if it's illegal and it gets taken down. They start another one. Like. It's not like he can go to one place every game to find the game he wants. He has to search it out, but he'll find it. He knows he's going to find it.
Fair enough, but sometimes I notice that when I'm watching something streamed,
yeah,
the picture quality is not as good.
No. Of course, it's not the same. But I mean, but technology will catch up. Eventually, we'll get there. No.
I just find that it's like the picture skips a little bit, or I don't know.
Even when I watch NFL games on DAZN, which I'm paying for, and is supposed to be like a premium official partner of the NFL, it's not as good. You know? So, but I mean, eventually I think the technology will get there. Eventually there's not going to be a difference between streaming and cable. Like, what's the difference? There's a signal coming in through your coaxial cable, or there's a signal coming in through your internet. Eventually it's going to be the same.
I think already it's the same cable in my house.
It's the same cable, but I'm talking about the signal that passes through that cable, right? Like, that's the big difference right now, right? The bandwidth, right? Like, so, anyway, you're right. It is the same cable. I love it. Well, another fun-filled edition of the Skip and Josh podcast.
Oh, which reminds me, I was with a friend the other day. I was 6 feet away, don't worry.
Yeah.
And he has a young daughter who's 2 years old, and she likes to skip. So I told her, I said, oh, if you like to skip, you might like the Skip and Josh podcast.
And what did the 2-year-old say?
She looked at me like I was drunk. She had no clue what I was talking about.
Of course. All right, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, have a good week.